Okay, it's 5 past, so let's get started. The microphone is here, so if I start walking and you don't hear anything, just yell, and I should get back here. This talk is about Jakarta EE10, and my name is Ivar Grimstad. I'm the Jakarta EE developer advocate at Eclipse Foundation. These are my social handles if you want to follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn or something else. You can find me there. I'm a Java champion, and I'm involved in a lot of these open source organizations, such as the JSAP and the Eclipse Foundation, Jakarta EE, Apache, and I run a Java user group in Malmö in Sweden. So Jakarta EE10 was released September last year, so it's a fairly new release. It's been out for about a half a year or so. And we like to call it a community-driven, modernized, simplified, and lightweight version of Jakarta EE, and I'll show you some of this in the following slides and some code demos as well. So Jakarta EE is all about specifications. And when we talk about specifications, we have a specification document that in textual form describes what the specification is all about. So you can read it, it's human readable, and it also has some kind of things that has to be in the specification and something that may be in the specification. But this is kind of the document that you would refer to check if you wanted to implement the specification, for example. Then we have the API, which is an API artifact that you get from Maven Central or somewhere else, or wherever you download your artifacts from. This is what you as application developers would use when you code with Jakarta EE, and this is the API. And then we have the TCK, or Test Compatibility Kit, which is a test suite that tests for compatibility. So it verifies that the implementation fulfills all the requirements that are listed in the specification document, and also that it actually implements the API. And that brings us to compatible implementations. And we need at least one compatible implementation to ratify a final specification. And a compatible implementation is an implementation that passes the TCK. And we can have many compatible implementations for a specification, but we need at least one open source one in order to say that, hey, this is final. After that, it can be any license you like. And Jakarta EE is about a lot of specifications. And these are the specifications that are part of the Jakarta EE10 platform. And you can see all the blue ones here are specifications that were updated between 9 and 10. So it's the majority of them. And the majority of them also have a major version number. That's the one with the .0 after the version number. So they have potentially backwards incompatible changes. We try to do some version of semantic versioning here. We're not super strict, but it's sort of. So those with a .1 after, those are minor updates with some features that were added, but it doesn't break anything. And there is one yellow down in the corner, or orange, which is a new specification, or actually, it's not a specification on its own, it's just a subset of CDI, but we kind of list it here as a new specification because it's kind of a new thing in 10, and I'll get to that in a minute. If we strip away a couple of these more enterprisey specifications, we're left with what we call the Jakarta EE Web Profile. And this is a profile of the Jakarta EE platform that is targeting a more traditional web application. It has specifications for UIs, for persistence, for transaction management and security and whatnot. So this is for the more traditional web applications. Then if we strip away the stuff that is the more traditional stuff or UI-centered web applications, we're left with a new set of specifications, or a new subset of specifications, because the Jakarta EE Core Profile is a new profile of Jakarta EE10. Web Profile was introduced in Java EE 6, so it has been around for a while, but Core Profile was introduced in 10. And these are a set of specifications that are targeting headless services or microservices. So you have, for RESTful endpoints, you have the JSON specification for processing and binding, and you have some glue code in between with annotations and stuff, and you have CDI Lite. So these are specifications that we are targeting smaller, leaner runtime, only creating like microservices. So I'm going to go through a couple of these, not all of them, but a couple of the key specifications. And I'll start with security. And Jakarta Security is a major update. They didn't break anything, or they did fix the APIs here and there, so technically it's a break and change, but it's more about adding features and evolving the API. And the thing they added for this release was support for OpenID Connect. And you may have used OpenID Connect in a non-standard way with Java EE and Jakarta EE before, but now you have a standard way of doing it with the new authentication mechanism for OpenID Connect, supported by Jakarta EE, so every implementation has it. The other updates were more foundation for future work and the lower level security specifications, namely Jakarta authorization and authentication. But these are stuff you're not normally exposed to as application developer. It's the Jakarta security specification that you would be exposed to. So these are more for implementers and for future work. And that's where the potential breaking changes were. And this is how you would define OpenID Connect authentication mechanism in a standard way. And you can see we like the short version of the annotations. So OpenID authentication mechanism definition. That's the annotation you would annotate in your code. And you have a bunch of properties where you can define how you would interact with the actual authentication of OpenID Connect, or the provider. Jakarta Persistence, 3-to-1, also adding features and evolving the APIs. And what they added here is something the community has asked for a long time. And this is UID as a basic Java type. So you can use UIDs directly in your entities without mapping them yourself. So this is kind of, remove that boilerplate and let the implementation take care of it for you. Then we're moving on to RESTful Web Services. And RESTful Web Services also, they planned to do a major release with a lot of breaking changes, but they chose to stay with the 3-to-1 and maintain compatibility and do the 4.0 in Jakarta EE11. So these are also things that were requested by the community. Among other things, support for multi-part form data, which you have probably been able to do using REST-DC or Jersey in a non-standard way, but now it's standard how you're going to do it, and it will work across implementation. So this is all what the specifications are about. Then there's a nifty cool feature, and that is the Java SE Bootstrap API that came in Jakarta RESTful Web Services. And this means that you can actually bootstrap a small REST application without an application server. You can just have it in a jar and run it with a main method. And I'll actually demo this one. So let's go to the IDE and have a look at it. What I have here is first of all, you can see it's a jar. So it's not the traditional war that you would have in a Jakarta application. The other thing is I'm using the shade plugin here. You can use any packaging thing just as a main class, whatever your favorite is. And you can see here I'm using the Jakarta RESTful Web Services 3-to-1. And since I'm not in an application server, I also have to add the actual implementation. So I'm using, in this case, REST-DC core, and also have the REST-DC undertow, the web server part of it, and also some JSON binding, so I can produce some JSON out to it. So that's all I have to do, add these kind of dependencies. But it's a little bit more than in a usual Jakarta web application where you just have the provided dependency for the API. Here you have to provide the implementations as well. The actual code is, if you're familiar with Jakarta REST, it's a RESTful endpoint. It has a HTTP GET method. It produces application JSON, and it's a hard-coded message out on the path, hello. It's very simple. The actual application configuration is in the Jakarta RESTful application, a class that extends this one. And since I'm bootstrapping this manually, I would need a main method. And I may put it in any class, but this one is as good as any. So I'll just add a main method to this application configuration class. And I have to do three things. The first thing I'm going to do is just to create the application. And that is just instantiate the application, and in this case, the class I'm in. The next thing I'm going to do is some configuration. And the configuration I'm doing here is just set the root path and the port number. And in addition to this, I have a lot of stuff I can configure other things. But in this case, I'm just doing that. And the last thing is to start the app. And in this case, I'm just starting it and then waiting for Control-C to see if it has to stop it. So it's very simple. It's basically the SE Bootstrap start, where I pass in the app and the config. And that's all there is to it. So let's go and just start this one. So I'll just Maven clean package. So I'm building it as a jar file, and I run it with java-jar jar. And it starts fairly quickly, and as you see, it will, let me just take this one, get rid of this. I have a larger browser here, there. And it's the /hello. And as you can see, it writes what is expected. So it's a very simple way of setting up a Jakarta RESTful with only the RESTful web services. So you don't need an application server or all that other heavy stuff that Jakarta is infamous for. So this was the application. It's just a simple greeting. The next thing I'm going to look at is the core profile as a whole. And Jakarta Core Profile was created, as I said, to enable smaller runtimes, to only create microservices. And where size matters, smaller is better than bigger. And that's why we only have the absolute necessary APIs that you need to create these. And the key one is CDI Lite to enable all of this stuff. And then we have RESTful Web Services and the JSON presentation specifications, and then the others are just for making it all to work. And the implementations that are currently Jakarta EE Core Profile compatible is Open Liberty, Payara, and Wildfly. And you may ask, what's small about these? These are the regular application servers. And yes, they are, because if you implement the web profile, you can just run the TCK for core profile and be core profile compatible as well, and there's nothing wrong with that. And some of these are actually configurable, so they are very small and only add the stuff you need in the runtime. By adding, for example, features in Open Liberty, you can strip it down to be a very small runtime, and the others are the same way. The runtimes we originally were targeted and are still hoping for are the ones that are already small from the beginning, like Helidon, Quarkus, Micronaut, and etc. And these kind of applications are not core profile compatible yet. My suspicion is that Helidon is probably going to be the first one, and that is probably going to happen very quickly, but I don't know. I cannot promise anything. But Helidon is the one that has actually said that they want to do it. So these are the ones that we hope will be core profile compatible within short. And CDI Lite 4.0 is the key specification of core profile. And CDI 4 is designed to work in a little bit more restricted environments than CDI is. And CDI is very dynamic by nature. It bootstraps a lot of things when you start the application and when you deploy the application. So what they've done with CDI Lite is to not remove the dynamic features, but actually be able to do the dynamic things at build time. And that means that the portable extensions API, which is the most dynamic thing of CDI, cannot be used because that's kind of resolved when you start the server, and we need it at compile time. And so they created a brand new extensions API that is called build compatible extensions, that you can create CDI extensions that will be resolved at build time, and thus enabling to do everything at build time, so we can use GraalVM to create native images. So Jakarta EE supports GraalVM if you're using CDI Lite underneath. The other thing they did, which is the big backwards incompatible change in Jakarta E10, is to change the behavior of Beans XML. So if you're relying on an empty Beans XML today, this is the slide to pay attention to, because this is what's going to create problems for you when you migrate to 10. This is not a difficult thing to do, you just have to be aware of it. And fix it, and it's very simple to fix. They also removed some old stuff that should have been removed a long time ago. That moves us into the demo part. And how many are actually using Jakarta EE here? Some of you, good. How many are using Spring? A little bit more. Yeah, that's usually as expected. So, Spring developers, you can sit and watch this actually, because this applies to you as well. Because if you're migrating from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, you're probably gonna discover a lot of Jakarta stuff in your applications. So the steps I'm showing here applies just as much to Spring developers as Jakarta EE developers. And what I'm going to do is take you from E8 to 10. And I'm going to start with E8 to E9. And from E8 to E9, the big thing was the namespace change. And that's where Spring comes in. That's what you're going to do in Spring as well. So this is what you have to pay attention to. And as I said, why should a Spring developer care? Yeah, because underneath in Spring, if you're using Spring Boot, you're running your stuff in Jetty or Tomcat, most likely. You could run it in anything, but that's mostly like what you're doing. And if you're using some kind of persistence, you're using Hibernate ORM for that. And if you have bean validation in code, well, that's probably a Hibernate validator. So you have a lot of stuff that are moved to the Jakarta namespace that you depend on, that you're also going to have to fix in your applications. And you can do this by just transforming your code. So you could run it, a transformer, for example, the Eclipse transformer or the Apache Tomcat migration tool. Just take your jar file or WAR file and let it go through these transformers, and it will create a copy of the jar file, but on the Jakarta namespace. So it will change the bytecode for you, and just do it, and you can run it and never have to think about it again. But if you have the source code, you probably want to do it in the source code and not rely on this bytecode transformation all the time. And luckily, the IDE helps you with this. So if you're using IntelliJ, you can use the Java EE Jakarta package namespace changer for you. So you just do a migration in the IDE, and you're done. Or you can do it manually. And even if you do it in the IDE, you probably will end up with doing some stuff manual as well. The first kind of 4 or 5 steps applies to Spring as well. And the 6th as well, yeah, all of them. But Spring, you actually have some additional. But that's a different presentation. I can do that next year here. So what we're going to do now is to take an application and run it through all of these steps. And the application I'm using is since I'm an architect, I've architected a hello world. And my hello world must have a database, I must have a persistent layer, I must have some transaction handling, and of course I'm producing JSON through a REST endpoint, because that's what a proper hello world application does. And I also have a CDI extension here to show the CDI stuff. So let's go through these steps, and I'll do the first 2 steps in more or less one go. I'll walk you through the code so we know what you're doing. First, let's see the POM file. It is a WAR this time. Let me just scroll carefully. I'm using Java 8. How many is using 8? Okay, 11, 17, 20. Okay, so we'll use some of these, but we'll start with 8 and go up. And you can see I'm using Jakarta E8. If you're using Java E8, you're fine as well, or Java E7, you can still do this. So the application is just the same application I had with the Booterduk. It's very simple. It's just a hello. This is an empty endpoint, and then I have a hello endpoint, which is a GET request producing JSON. I have an EJB. It's called Duke service. It's calling the find greetings method on Duke service, and the Duke service EJB. You can see it's an EJB since it has at stateless annotation. That's all there is about EJB, so it's not that complicated. And you can see I'm injecting a Duke's repository, and from the Duke's repository, I'm doing a find all, and then I take the first one. And if there isn't the first one that is empty, I'll just hardcode something. So the find all method is in the Duke's repository. It is using the entity manager from Jakarta Persistence and just using the criteria language to select everything from Duke's greeting. And Duke's greeting is my entity, which is a table with 3 columns. and ID messages and email, and getters and setters on that. So that's my entire application. You may also have noticed that I had this Dux annotation here. That is something I'm looking for in the extension. I'm just checking for the Dux and printing a log message and start. So this is the application. And if I run this in Glassfish 5, since it's on Jakarta EE8, I'll just deploy this application. You can see in the log file here, it prints hi there, which is the CDI extension doing this stuff. And in the actual application, if I go here, you can see it says howdy Jakarta EE8. So everything works, it's fine, and let's get on with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is to upgrade the Jakarta version. And I'm going to go from 8 to 9.1, refresh the POM, and you'll see a lot of compilation errors happens. And what I can do is to take the refactor in IntelliJ here and migrate packages Java to Jakarta EE. I'll just choose the complete Duke application, and I'll run the refactoring, and it changes the path for me. So this is the namespace change. That's done. So what I did here was the first 2 steps. The next thing I'm going to do is the XML schema namespaces. If I'm doing have some XML files in my application, I may have to change the namespaces. This may or may not apply to Spring. You probably have some property files where you have to do changes, but in Jakarta EE we have usually some XML files here and there. And in my case, it's the persistence XML. And my persistent XML here, you can see it's the old JSP namespace, and this has to be changed to the Jakarta namespace. And what we did was to add an HTTPS, and then we have Jakarta.ee. So it's very simple to remember. And I also have to change the schema location here. I think actually some of the transformers takes the XML for you. At least the Tomcat migration tool will take this schema for you as well. So if you do bytecode translation, you don't have to think about this. One thing to note is that in Jakarta EE, we've always used the version number in the XSD file, so it's easy to check that you're using the right file. And now you can see it validates and says you have to use the right version. So this is the only XML file here. If you have other WebXML or Beans XML or something, you need to fix that as well. So the fourth thing is the property files. And if I have some JavaX prefix property files, and you can see 2 of them here in this file. I'm using this to generate the test data for this application. And I have JavaX here. So what I have to do is to remove that prefix to Jakarta. So it's very consistent all the way. It's always JavaX to Jakarta, except for the namespaces where it's JCP to Jakarta. So now I've done the prefix as well. You may have properties everywhere in your application. So I added in one file here. Then it's the bootstrapping files. And this only applies if you actually have bootstrapping files. And I do, since I have this CDI extension. And CDI extensions are activated in a file called JavaX Enterprise Inject SPI extension, where the contents is the fully qualified path to the extension. And as you may guess, this file has to be renamed. And it's not that hard to guess what it's going to be renamed to. So it's just replace JavaX with Jakarta. So now I've done all the steps, except the last one, which is dynamic content. And I'll do that when I deploy the application. So let's just kill the old Glassfish and start a new one. There you go. And then I'll deploy the application. Complete Duke, add it. There you go. And deploy it. So, and the CDI extension works, so you see it picked it up there. This one runs on the same port as the previous one, but you can see here's the dynamic data. It says, how did Jakarta EE8? And I wanted Jakarta EE since I've migrated to it. So this is the dynamic. In my case, it's just a stupid text. But if you kind of concatenate strings, like putting Java X in front of something and using it as properties, this is where you have to take care of the dynamic content. Or if you're building a fully qualified class name and looking after some classes that implements Java X something, then this is where you have to change it. In my case, it's just the data in the database, so I can easily change this to Jakarta EE 9 and submit it. And now my application should be Jakarta EE 9. So that was fairly easy. Let's go one step further and go to 10. And I'm using the same application, and these steps will be much simpler. So first, what I want to do is, I'll just take this one and say, we want to go to 10. I'll update the database so it's updated. Then I'll just get rid of this. Another thing, I don't want to drop the database again next time I run it, so I'll just, comment this out. So what I want to do is to upgrade this, and first thing I'm going to do is to upgrade it to Java 17, because now we don't want to use 8 anymore. So I'll upgrade it to 17, and also upgrade it to Jakarta EE 10. So I've done two things. I'll reload the project, and it should work fine, right? But since I have 10 here, let's do one more thing. You may notice that since I have Java 17, what I'm doing here is I'm exposing my database entity in the REST layer, and that's not a good architectural thing, so I'll create a data object in between. And since I'm on Java 17 here, what I can do is use record. So I'll use a record called Duke's greeting record. And I'll give it a string message and a local date. There we go. So I've created a record that I will use in my REST endpoint. And what I'm doing here, I'll simply return the record through my REST endpoint and fix the compilation errors. So my find greeting method in the enterprise bin needs to return the record. And then when I've found the first one, what I can do then is to map it. And I'll take the greeting I found in the database and just create a new Duke's greeting record. I'll take the message and I'll take local date of now. And also, in case I don't find anything in the database, I have to hardcode the record as well and I'll use local date now here as well. So now I created a record that I'm returning through the interface. Right? So the next thing I'll do is to drop it into a Glasswith 7, which is compatible with Jakarta EE 10. I see that I should update from the milestone. They're actually on the Glasswith 7.04 now, I think so. And I'll add the artifact and just drop it in. So you see the upgrade thing to 10 is much smoother than to the from 8 to 9. So when I've done the 8 to 9, the next step is fairly simple. So let's go and just check if this works. This one is actually on port 8080, so I'll just have to update this. There we go. Okay, who thinks this works? Huh? I got an internal error, and it says something, could not create stateless EJB or something. What happened there? Remember the one backwards incompatible thing in Jakarta 10, the beans XML. So in my case, I'm not relying on an empty beans XML, but I'm relying on a non-existent beans XML, meaning the same thing as an empty beans XML, and I don't have a beans XML. So what I have to do is to add the beans XML. And this is kind of painful, but it's something that you just have to do. Luckily, there is support for this in the somewhere. If I can just find the. Oh my God. Am I blind or why? Oh, I have to go there. Yeah. Can you see XML file somewhere? Oh, it's down below. No. Crap. Is it on the... Can you see any configuration file here? Well, let's just try to create it from scratch. So what I'm going to do is to create a new XML file. I'll just create a file, beans XML. And this beans XML file need to have a beans, and I think it can actually be empty. This is kind of the first for me to see if this works, but let's try this. You should actually have schemas and all that kind of stuff in it, but yeah, no, it doesn't work. So I don't get it why it wouldn't. It usually shows me a new beans XML file here, but yeah, okay. So.
I think you need to go to the project and add a framework.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, it could be, but it usually will add a configuration file here, so it usually has it. But I upgraded the IntelliJ a little bit too prematurely, I guess. But you just have to trust me on that it actually works. I think I actually have a beans XML in a different project here I can use. No, I don't. So. Yeah, so I'll jump past the core profile and the build compatible extensions because they're sort of irrelevant here. But after Jakarta EE 10 is Jakarta 11. And Jakarta 11 is not only starting now, it has started now. We're on the roll. We're gathering input from all the specification. Remember all the blue specifications and all the ones that want to be blue for 11 are the ones we're gathering input now, and we want to plan reviews in by end of May so we can start to compose what Jakarta 11 will be all about. And one of the things we are trying to do is to establish a release cadence, and the release cadence that will be 6 months after the Java LTS version. So Java 21 comes out in September later this year, and in Q1 or early Q2 next year, our plan is to release Jakarta 11, which will be based on Java 21. So we are telling the APIs, if you want to use 21 features, that's fine. You can also stay on 17 if you want to do that. You can stay on 11 if you want to do that. But if you want to use 21, you can, because we will make sure that the TCK and the runtimes run on 21. And that's the important thing. Whatever version the APIs are compiled to, that's sort of, yeah, we don't really care, because Java is backwards compatible. Some of the specification we're looking at is Jakarta Config. It may or may not be a part of this release, depends on how far they're at their release. But what they want to do is to standardize the way we configure applications. So rather than using these XML files and these persistent XML, we should be able to configure it with just a configuration attribute or annotations in your code. So it will pick it up from the environment. So if you deploy it into Kubernetes, it will pick the Kubernetes properties. If you deploy it on your laptop, it will pick properties from there, or whatever configuration source you actually configure it with. And there will be some annotation-based support like @config property or similar, and also a programmatic API, so you can program if you want. Jakarta MVC, I'm not sure if that will actually make it to the Jakarta Web Profile, but this is a standardized way of doing action-based MVC. So in a couple of years, when server-side rendered applications with Java is back on the popularity, MVC is there and ready to help you. And it's very easy to use. It's an at controller and an at view annotation adding to the Jakarta REST. So it's built on top of Jakarta REST and just has a couple of annotations added to that. So it's a very simple way of creating web UIs. Jakarta NoSQL is a new specification that will standardize the integration with NoSQL databases. Whether it will make it or not would depend on the vendors if they want to support it. But you as users also have the power of telling them, yes, we want it. So if you want it, join that mailing list and tell people that you want it. Jakarta RPC is a standardizing of gRPC. So you can do that in a standard way using Jakarta technologies. This is probably not going to make it to this release because they haven't done enough work yet. But you never know. Suddenly they do things. It's like the ketchup bottle. Jakarta Data is probably the most likely to make it into Jakarta 11. And this standardized the repository pattern for data access. And this will be a complete rip-off of Spring Data. And we're proud of it. So we're not saying anything about that. That's a cool thing. And we want to have that in Jakarta EE as well. So to sum up, Jakarta EE 9 was all about the namespace. That's what causing problems in the Spring community now, but we're gladly to help you. So if you have any questions about the migration, come and ask us and we can help you. The Jakarta EE 10 platform is the latest version of Jakarta EE. There's a lot of updates in the specification, and a lot of good small stuff that I didn't have time to mention here today. The core profile is a new thing with Jakarta EE. It enables smaller runtimes. It enables compiling to native if that's your Kool-Aid. So Jakarta EE Core Profile is a new profile. In Jakarta 10, we are supporting Java 17. We're testing on 17. Everything is compiled to 11, so if you have to be on 11, you can still use Jakarta EE 10. But I would recommend to go on a later version. Most of the implementations run on Java 20 as well, so you can choose whatever you like, but we make definitely sure that it runs on 17. If you want to know more about Jakarta EE, you can go to jakarta.ee. It's a very simple URL to remember. If you write blogs or want to read blogs about Jakarta EE or related technology, even Spring or something else, or Java, or if you're doing fly fishing or whatever, if you have a blog and want to get listed on Jakarta blogs, you can. Just go to that page and see the how to get listed here button, and you can get your blog, get some promotion for you there. I write a weekly blog post. It's on Jakarta blog, it's on Jakarta EE, and it's on my own domain. The demo code for this talk with a kind of a step-by-step tutorial, these 6 steps of doing the migration, is on my GitHub. It's called Jakarta EE Duke. If you search for Jakarta EE Duke in your favorite search engine, you will hit this one. Nobody else calls their application Jakarta EE Duke. So you will find this one here. We're doing a Jakarta EE developer survey. So if you want to pick up the phones and spend a couple of minutes in the break and fill out the survey, it doesn't matter if you're a Jakarta EE or Spring developer. We want to have input from you all. You can win a T-shirt by doing this. So go ahead. Another one, yeah. Yet another T-shirt. You can never have enough T-shirts. And talking about swag, we have 1 minute left for questions, and I have 2 pair of beautiful 5-year anniversary Jakarta EE socks, and I have some screen wipes there. So the first person to ask questions will get these. So we have some time for questions. Any question? Anyone want socks? A question could be, can I have a pair of socks? Yes, you can. Oh, sorry. Anyone else? Yes? And I have some screen wipes here. I can't throw them in these parts. So I'll put them here, and the first one coming out, you can get them. I have stickers as well, so please feel free to come here and take them. Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the show.